All right, we are live. And hi, everybody. My name is Teo Gonzalez, and I am the head of AI business development at Airbyte. We'll do proper introductions in a moment. I just want to make sure that we have a chance to get everyone up and going. So we'll give it one more minute before we actually start the presentation. And then I'll go ahead and get my screen going, Alex. And we can go from there. Alrighty. Looks like we are good to go. Um, okay, so everyone, thank you for joining our webinar today. We're going to do a deep dive and walkthrough of some of the things that we've been working on specifically towards powering contextual AI agents. Alex on the team, who's going to introduce himself shortly, is going to show you exactly what it is that we have been working on. So just to give you a quick agenda for what you can expect from today, feel free to use the chat, by the way, if you do have any questions. I'll be paying attention. But realistically, the goal for what we already have prepared is just to talk about some of the common frameworks we're seeing in terms of connecting data to AI. And then Alex is going to do that deep dive so you can actually look into how you could go ahead and do this yourself. We'll also reserve some time at the end for Q&A where we can cover anything. Then if people don't need that time, also no issues at all. So that being said, for quick introductions, I already introduced myself. Alex, how about you kind of give your intro on yourself to everybody?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm the lead engineer on Airbyte's AI team. Uh, Super excited to show you some of the work that we've been doing to make it easier to build your data context to power your AI applications.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't know Airbyte, and by the way, I'm going to do my best to move around the thing so it's not covering any of the slides in the text. Thank you for the feedback from last time. Um, but Airbyte is a data movement platform that enables you to connect to hundreds of sources or build your own integrations that you need to in order to power AI agents or even analytics platforms internally. We're open source, been around for 5 years, and because of that, we have a lot of context on how to build high quality data platforms and AI platforms. And so that being said, want to talk about what it actually means to connect the two. So, I talked about data platforms, AI platforms. The reality is, if you are building an AI today, you're probably already familiar with some of the things that we're also seeing in the market, which is you need to bring in customer context if you want to build an application or an AI agent that is servicing a high quality experience to your end users. And so what that means is you're doing tons of stuff beyond just bringing the data to a final destination where you might be vectorizing it, creating embeddings. You're doing things like normalizing the data, cleaning it up, deduplicating that data. You're summarizing all these different things. And the idea is that journey that your data is going through will ultimately add huge value for your end customer. There's just a lot of pieces that you need to touch along the way, which is what we think a lot about here at Airbyte. Where can we add a lot of the value? What are people doing that is the most interesting? And ultimately, what do we need to be doing going forward to make this an even more scalable and highly performative function? And so we've talked a lot about this kind of data journey for the past several months for AI use cases in some of these webinars. What I want to actually hone in on is what Alex is going to talk about today, which is the idea that that contextual AI application at the end is yet another entry point to a whole other sequence that you might be thinking about, which is how do your agents take action based off of all the context it gathers. So you've ingested Zendesk data, great. What happens when I want to update a ticket? You've uh, noticed something when it comes to a Salesforce opportunity. Excellent. How do we go ahead and update that so an account executive doesn't need to go ahead and take unnecessary administrative action themselves? And so, Alex, I think in the next slide, you're going to talk more about what this looks like, but I wanted to consolidate this for everybody to make sure that we highlight often that first part of the journey, because that's where our specialty is historically in terms of extracting and loading to where it needs to go. But realistically, a lot of what we're also doing at Airbyte is thinking not only about ingesting the data, but making that data usable for whatever that use case might be. So today we're going to really focus on authentication which is what Alex is going to talk about here shortly. But I also want to mention that in future webinars, maybe we're leaving some breadcrumbs here. We're going to talk about other things like ontologies, what it looks like enriching data, things of that nature. So, Alex, I'll hand it over to you. You can go on mute and talk more about your diagram and then take it from there.
Thank you, Theo. Can you just go back one more slide? I really
Yeah,
want to hone in on something.
yeah,
So
go for it.
people already familiar with Airbyte will know that we already handle a lot of the first steps of this AI context data pipeline. So Airbyte will allow you to connect to sources and extract the data and put it into either a staging store so that you can do the transformations, or maybe directly into a database where it would have duplicated the record. But one thing that became really obvious over the last year or so that we've been working with AI developers is that using this sort of like historical data set is usually only the first step in the maturity of AI applications. It's super useful to be able to build this context so that the AI has like context and an understanding of your data, but then eventually you'll want to take actions with this data. And this requires an access to the integration that is in real time, both to uh, one, take the action, so actually change the data in your CRM store or in your ticket integrations, but also to verify the state of the world as it actually is before you take an action, so that you don't just rely on historical data that might be out of date. So what we'll talk about today is how Airbyte's authentication proxy allows you to do those three types of data movement by leveraging a single authentication system, so that you don't need to use Airbyte only for moving historical data and then like build your own tooling for making API calls in real time. So what the authentication proxy looks like is it's just a REST API that you can call. You can make a post request to a slash request path, and then you'll pass in the ID of a source that has been pre-configured. So this is an Airbyte source. For example, you might have pre-configured a Stripe source or a HubSpot source. You'll get the ID, and then you'll add some additional information about the request that you want to send to this third-party API. So here in this example, we'll send a GET request to the Stripe API to the invoices endpoint. And then when you send this request to Airbyte, what we'll do is we will iterate the secret using the secret store that we are already maintaining for your daily or hourly syncs. We'll extract the credentials and we'll inject them into the request that you already pre-configured before sending it to Stripe. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to essentially send requests in real time directly to Stripe without having to maintain any of the credentials. And this is super important because while you definitely don't want to send those credentials to any of the LLMs, but you also probably don't want your applications to have access to them because it's just a liability. So in the interest of having the least access privilege as possible, you want to leverage a system that is already known to be secure. And if you're already using Airbyte to handle your bulk data movement, it's just a good fit to keep using Airbyte for your other types of data movement. And then, yeah, when after sending the request to the third-party API, we'll just return the response as is. And then this allows you to do all sorts of things like fetching the invoices like in real time to get the latest view or the latest understanding of the world. But this could also be used to send a post request to make a change to a customer or to amend invoices or do any kind of operations that you might want to do using an API. So can you go to the next slide, Theo? All right, let's do a workshop. Let's dive into it. Let's see how we can use Airbyte's authentication proxy to build a small AI application that will use Stripe invoices and do some recommendations about what could be improved. So I will share my screen, and there's a few. Okay, so yeah, so we'll build a Streamlit app essentially because it's simple. But afterwards, I'll also share a few more like frameworks that you can use just to show that the authentication proxy can be used in any context. And we will use Airbyte to connect to Stripe, and we'll use OpenAI as our LLM model to actually do the processing and make some recommendations based on the invoices. So in terms of prerequisites, you'll need a Stripe account, and you'll want to configure it into your cloud, your Airbyte cloud instance. Here it's already configured. Configuration should be fairly straightforward. You just need your account ID and your secret key. And then what you'll want to do is you'll take the source ID, which you can take here just from the URL, and you will paste it into this environment variable. And as I said this, I should mention all the code will be available and shared so that you can like walk through the exercise yourself. So yeah, you'll paste in the source ID. You'll also want your organization ID, which you can also find from the UI. And you'll also want to create a client ID and client secret. So these are credentials that you will grant to your application so that they can make requests to the Airbyte server. And you'll also just paste them into your .env file, which I've already done here. I'm just showing the example here. Once you've, oh, and you also need, of course, an OpenAPI key. Okay, so now that we configured our environment, I'll just show my application. This is just a simple Streamlit app bundle with UV, so I'll just do UV run. It's going to spin up the Streamlit app. Very straightforward. It's just a single button to fetch and analyze invoices. And here we'll see what happens behind the scene. And afterwards, we'll do a deep dive into how this works. So here, the first step was to fetch a bearer token. So using the Airbyte client ID and client secret, we will make a call to Airbyte to generate a bearer token, which is an ephemeral token that you can use to make future
Alex,
requests.
quick
Yes,
thing. While you're going through, if you're able to slightly increase the size on your screens, maybe for your
of
code, that'd
course,
be
yes,
super helpful. Thank you.
of course, yes. Yeah, and then we'll use this bearer token to submit a request to the Airbyte authentication proxy, which will then forward the request to Stripe. We'll fetch the invoices, and then we'll submit a prompt to OpenAI. And then we can see some recommendations. So here it produces some insights and trends. Like it says that most of our activities are coming from two customers. Let's see, something interesting here, like there's draft invoices that are waiting for actions. There's no major risks identified. And of course, this is something that you would want to tweak depending on the specifics of your application. All I want to show is that it is possible to use the authentication proxy to create the prompt that will be used to generate your output. So let's just take a quick look at what this looks like. So I will zoom in. I will look at my app. It's pretty much just a single file. It's like very small. So when we click on this fetch and analyze button, we will go through the application flow, which is, like I said, we'll set up the authentication, we'll fetch the invoices via the Airbyte authentication proxy. Then we will build a prompt that we will submit to OpenAI, and then we'll display the results. Okay, so let's take a quick or a deeper look at what the authentication process will look like. So the way this works is we'll submit a request to api.airbyte.com/v1/applications token. with the code base, we can also share the API documentation. But essentially, what this endpoint will do is, given the client ID and client secret that we pasted into our environment file, it will return a bearer token that we can use to authenticate subsequent requests. So this is all we need for the authentication. The rest of the code is just error handling, essentially. And then using this bearer token, we will fetch the invoices via the authentication proxy. How does this work? Well, we'll submit a request to this endpoint here, API.Airbyte.ai, V1 Sonar APIs. Here we'll use this source ID, which, as a reminder, we got from the URL here. You can just paste it and you'll get it. And then as part of the request body, we'll tell Airbyte like what request we actually want to forward. If there's going to be a GET request to the Stripe invoices resource, and it returns a list of invoice dictionaries. And we also just need to pass in the organization ID as a request header just to disambiguate. That's more of a small nuance, but it's just because my personal Airbyte account has multiple organizations tied to it. Okay, so we submit this request, and then we'll just extract the response. Here is a little bit of data mangling, just like to make sure that we actually get it right. But here you can just play with the output and figure out what makes the most sense depending on the specifics of your data. The point is that this will return an array of JSON objects, each JSON object representing an invoice. And then next step is to build the analysis prompt. So the way that we'll build a prompt is fairly straightforward. There is a base prompt that essentially tells the model its role or what you expect of it. Here, you're an experienced financial planner and accountant, analyze the Stripe invoices data and prepare a plan for managing them. This is not a prompt engineering workshop. I'm sure that you'll need to tweak this to get the specific results that you want. But what I really want to emphasize is that in addition to this base prompt, we'll also inject the invoices that we retrieved. And this will create the context so that the model can actually generate an output that is grounded in the reality. Now here, I just want to take a quick break and mention that depending on the type of applications, you might want to generate this list of invoices differently. Here we are like fetching them in real time simply for the purposes of the demo. But maybe for the type of analysis that you care about, what you really want is to get the full list of invoices that might span many, many years. In this case, what you would want is simply use Airbyte, set up a connection, move the data to your S3 bucket, and then ingest them and vectorize them, and then do a semantic search to find the ones that are more relevant. Maybe you want to do a combination of historical data and fresh data. Here, sky really is the limit. There's many, many ways that you can get those invoices. What really matters is just that they get injected into your prompt. Here, not strictly required, but I highly recommend it. Save your prompt somewhere so that you can troubleshoot why the model does not always behave as expected. This is going to be super helpful. Here, just for the demo, I'm saving it to a file, but you might want to use a tool that provides more lineage, or maybe even just store it into your database, just so that you can find it later on to troubleshoot any issues that you might have. And yeah, next step is to actually submit the prompt to OpenAI. OpenAI has a Python SDK that I'm using here just for the sake of simplicity. You can also use the chat completion endpoint if you just want to submit an HTTP request. when working in Python, I just find it simpler to use the SDK. Super easy to use. Specify the model, input the prompt, and then read through the output. Output is an output content text, and then that's just the text. And then the last thing to do is just to display the result. So this is, of course, going to be very application dependent. But here in our case, we just highlighted some of the recommendations, build a markdown table, and then I think there's some graphics at the bottom. We just like go back to show it. That looks like I already closed it, but it's fine. While this loads, I want to talk a little bit about some potential next steps. The main one, which I already sort of touched on a little bit, is that for a production application, you will probably want to combine processing bulk data and ingesting it into your virtual database or your hybrid search system with real-time data so that you have a clearer picture of the reality. And the pattern that I'll usually see is using the bulk data or the historical data to sort of make a plan about what the model should do, and then making a quick API call just to verify that the current state of reality is still aligned with what you would expect before actually taking action and submitting a post request. Here, I just wanted to quickly show that, yes, we use Streamlit to generate a plot. Another thing that I want to briefly touch on is that this is not only useful for like full-fledged application. This can also be used in like simple workflows. So here I am using Nation or N8N. I'm not totally sure how this is meant to be pronounced to essentially go through the same flow. So here we'll get the access token. We'll submit a post request to Airbyte to get the invoices. Then we'll pass them to OpenAI, and finally we'll send a Slack message just summarizing the analysis that has been done on those invoices. So here, I really just want to show that the authentication proxy is a good fit for like all sorts of applications, and I don't want you to feel like this is only meant to be used either in small no-code workflows or in like full-fledged app. This is just a tool so that you don't need to maintain the credentials of your sources, which is particularly important if you're maintaining credentials that on behalf of your users, you certainly don't want to leak them, and you probably don't want to use multiple systems to maintain them either, uh, um, because then you might need to ask them to authenticate more than once. Here, if I just want to go and show really quick what the message will look like, here you can see the daily invoice strategy analysis, and it's a summary of what it's seen on the Stripe messages, Stripe invoices. That is what I wanted to show. Hopefully, like you learned some useful trick. And I'll pass it off to Theo. Were there any questions that we want to answer?
No questions in the chat, and I have to apologize. I accidentally kind of cut you off at 1.2 from your screen to go to
Okay,
the slides to see if there's anything else, but you brought it back just in time to show the Slack message, so it's all good.
awesome.
Um, I think that was great. Let me see if anyone wants to add anything into the chat. But otherwise, what I would go ahead and suggest is if people do have more questions, they want to learn more, you can go ahead and connect with us over on the Airbyte team. If you want to specifically follow more along with what Alex is working on, that's all findable at airbyte.com /slash AI. That's where we're going to be publishing a whole host of our things related to AI agents. Highly recommend you check it out. That said, Alex and I will stay here a couple more minutes in the event anyone does have any questions. Otherwise, thank you everybody for joining in today. This is obviously recorded on YouTube, so you can go ahead and find it again later if you want to follow along live. But otherwise, thanks for joining.
Right, thank you so much.
And Alex will linger for two, but otherwise, I think we'll be good to close it.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds good.
So I'm going to shorten it from 2 to 1 because it looks like everyone dropped on the stream. So we're good to go. Thank you again. This was
All right.
awesome. And thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Bye.